Cowboy builders, the very common thing I hear is like literally every 2 days he's asking me for payments. You need to pay me, otherwise I stop work, and like they're continually paying him. So suddenly they're paid 80 grand, but they've done 30 grand worth of work.
If your builder's available, you see them on a Monday and they're available on the Saturday, now there's a red flag, right? A contractor that we've used in the past, we've then walked onto a project that they've been engaged on. And I remember walking onto site once and there was one of the joiners cutting a piece of wood by it with a handsaw, and he's like cutting it in half with his hand, no like measurement, no. And I was just thinking, this is madness. Hi everyone, just before we get going with today's podcast, just a quick announcement that our book is now live on Amazon. Like, you go and search for Financial Freedom at BDRR, you'll find a book that describes the mindset, strategy, systems that we put together to deliver over 50 projects in 5 years. We launched it in 2025 and it went to #1 in 3 separate categories on the bestseller list. So hopefully you'll find some real good value out of it. And just one more time, Financial Freedom, BDRR on Amazon.
Yeah, the BDR evolution is changing the game.
Well, that's the full title. If you want to be picky. Yeah, go and find it. Hi folks, and welcome back to the Financial Freedom Podcast. Today on the show, we're having one of our technical episodes, and it's all things to do with the phrase cowboy builders. Now, a little bit clickbaity, but what we're going to be talking about is how to A, make sure that your build programs work really, really well, and B, to suss out if somebody is potentially going to be a cowboy builder, and if you do end up with one, what to do. So with me, as always, on the technical episodes is Tim. Hi, Tim.
Hello, great to be here again.
Yeah. So you've been in the project management and estimation game for a while now, you say?
Good 20 years.
25 now. It's 25 now, mate.
25 now?
No, not quite. It's 20, isn't it? Yeah. I think he was still saying 15. I have to point out we've been doing this job for 5 years. So yeah. 20 years.
Just jump every
every 5 years.
Yeah.
That's it. So you've seen it all probably, I would have thought, in that time frame. So, but we still hear this phrase a lot. Why is it such a fear for people? What is it that the people still worried about cowboy builders?
So I'll start with something. So I think in the UK we're at the moment. So I think part of the reason there are a lot of what we call cowboy builders, or builders that do a poor job, poor workmanship, things like that, and perform really, really badly, is there isn't a direct barrier to entry for the building trade necessarily. Right. So you definitely have to be qualified to be, say, gas engineer and electrician and things like that, but as a general builder you could basically just call yourself a builder, and then you are basically, in a way. So there's no real direct qualification or course you've got to meet or anything like that. So that means that
there are bodies, but they're elective, aren't they?
Yeah, there's some elective bodies, but there's no
CITB and so on.
Yeah, exactly. So that's part of the problem. So there's lots of good ones, there's lots of mid-range average ones, and then there are some cowboy builders we're talking about as well. But I think going back to your question is like, why should this be a fear, is what you're saying?
Yeah, why is it a fear? What is it? Because this is the thing for me.
So it can massively derail your project.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why. And so you've bought a property, you're converting it, you're refurbishing it. Your biggest risk element is the construction program, because that's where it can unfortunately go horribly, horribly wrong. And what I mean by that is, if you've got a cowboy builder, so you've got big risks that like really bad workmanship, defects, and cost escalation and all these sort of things. So they might be building something that doesn't even meet building regulation requirements. So they built out half the project. Yeah. You might not have payment terms agreed. So every 2 days they're asking you for some sort of payment. You've overpaid them for what they've done. And then, you have to either get rid of that builder or contract that cowboy builder, bring someone else in, and you've overpaid them to start with. Then also there might be a lot of rework associated with that work, because they might have put stuff in that the quality is not to standard, or it doesn't meet regulations or something like that. So you're basically ripping it all out again to rebuild it from a good quality perspective. And then also, even if that cowboy builder does get through the project, even if they're over budget and very, very late, you might have defects moving forward.
Yeah.
So things hidden in the wall, like plumbing defects and electrical defects and all these sort of things, roofing defects that might cost you a lot of money over time. So even though you got to the end of your project miraculously, it could cost you a lot in maintenance over time as well, and things like that.
Yeah, and we've seen it. We've certainly seen it. So we work with contractors. Now, the benefit that you can do to manage some of these things is having a good team in place to oversee and catch things up front, isn't it? But we've seen it where a contractor that we've used in the past, we've then walked onto a project that they've been engaged on where we haven't been involved from the start and just gone, stop.
it can be much, much worse, can't it?
Stop
It's not
whatever you're
managed
doing right
wrong.
now. There was a roof that was going to look like it was going to fall down. There was, and I remember walking onto site once, and there was one of the, I'm going to call them joiners, cutting a piece of wood by it with a handsaw, and he was holding the piece of wood, and he's like cutting it in half with his hand, no like measurement, no, and I was just thinking, this is madness. There was a young lad, and like, he was just didn't know what he was doing. But the problem,
Safety is a big issue there as well, by the way.
massively, he could have cut his hand off.
Obviously, that's a big point. So Cowboy builders, not only can the workmanship be bad, but they could be working really unsafely, which is dangerous and obviously risky. But we had a contract, so we took over a project, and it was from a contractor that we had done projects with before.
Yeah, exactly.
I worked classed as a Cowboy builder, unfortunately. They were taking down a chimney the wrong way. So the building almost like pulled out from the building. And we had to get another contractor in to stabilize it and prop it up and all this sort of stuff.
And the irony of that builder, did I tell you this the other day? I saw it. He was advertising online about the problem with Cowboy builders.
And that's one of the dangerous things, unfortunately.
And that's the problem with social media. Always take numerous references and ask in the groups, have you worked with this person? Because if you're engaging that company based on their social media profile, you're open to that. And even to the point where we've had somebody recently who's come to us and said he's going to use that contractor because they're available. And we've said, don't do that. And
he's ready to start this Saturday. He's like, I've got strict time frames ready to start this Saturday. I said, good luck. Unfortunately, if something goes wrong with that, we will not offer our service to step in because it's and as harsh as it is, it's like it's not worth our time and we will.
It's going to require a lot of triaging.
It's going to result in a lot of triage, unfortunately. So you've touched on a point there. Is like how do you avoid a Cowboy builder? Number one is through recommendations. Because if you have a bad experience with a build contract or a Cowboy builder, you are not going to recommend them to someone.
No.
So the other thing is to make sure that recommendation is someone that's worked with that person, because sometimes people do recommendations just because they've seen someone else recommend them.
Or in good faith because they know them.
Or in good faith because they know them. So make sure the recommendation is from someone that's actually worked with that builder. So they know for sure that what they do.
The countenance to that, though, is that if someone says it's negative, take 2 or 3 opinions. Because it could very well be that it's the developer.
Don't talk to one person and say, "Oh, rule them out." That's a very good point, because they could have been the problem. And also what they're saying might not be fair. If that makes sense. So go to 2 or 3 others, like you said, to get a rounded approach. So that's a really good bit of advice. But also after that, conduct your own due diligence. So I think, the things that we do is visit existing sites, visit completed sites, because visiting a completed site, you'll see what the quality of workmanship's like. It also means that building contractor is still in touch with that client, and they've got a good enough relationship that they're allowed to go and visit that site. Existing site is very much about organization, safety, things like that. If you go to someone's existing site, you can generally see if they're a Cowboy builder or not. Potentially they could fudge a little bit to start with, but that's one check that you could rule someone out or keep moving forward with the process. Obviously references from other people they work with, and like I said, not just recommendations but actual references from people that they've worked with. Really, if you can, make sure that those references are real references and have actually completed projects with them. Because I've talked to people that have worked with Cowboy builders, they say, I talked to references and they were very good. I'm like, well, what projects did they do? Did you make sure they were actually live projects?
When was it
so
done?
if you got that reference and you visit the site, likelihood it's right, it's hard to fudge it. But Cowboy builders, they're very, very good at fudging things, unfortunately. Like you said, social media and also even references, they'll give people that they know to say that they're good to work with and all these sort of things. So you need to be very, very careful of that.
What about mitigations then? Because there's lots of things you can do there in terms of referencing and stuff like that. But there's things that you can do as well, which will identify whether or not this company is right for you. So what mitigations can you bring in ahead of the actual build program starting? So what can you do to mitigate?
So you're talking about terms and conditions?
Terms and conditions, things like that. Because generally speaking, if you are a Cowboy builder, the more professional the developer is, the less likelihood is you're going to actually get to the end of their onboarding process, right?
Exactly. So I think on that, so it's having clear terms and conditions agreed up front, because I think the classic thing with a Cowboy builder is, like you said, it's like they start on Saturday. Maybe they've given a price and a quote, and that's probably about it.
If your builder's available, you see them on a Monday and they're available on the Saturday.
Very big red flag.
Now there's a red flag, right?
Yeah, definitely can be. So they've given you a price, that's about it. So at that point, you don't have a contract, you've no clear terms and conditions. basically you're operating under consumer law, I think it is. You're not working under
Common
contract
trader
law as
practice.
much. Yeah, consumer trader practice and stuff like that. But if you have a contract or even a heads of terms, that's kind of a contract in itself where you've agreed things like payment terms.
Yeah.
Cowboy builders, the very common thing I hear is like literally every 2 days he's asking me for payments.
Money.
I need another $5,000, another $4,000, $6,000, $10,000.
Yeah. Weekend
And
millionaire.
like, or you need to pay me, otherwise I stop work. And like they're continually paying him. So suddenly they're paid $80,000, but they've done $30,000 worth of work. So that's a very common thing. But if you agree the payment terms up front, you're only paying in accordance with those terms. That's a big mitigator, because even if they are a Cowboy builder, you're only paying them for what they've done to date.
Yeah, and again, it's the percentage. Sometimes and you've got to be careful here, though, haven't you? Because your payment terms have to be relevant to the job. So if you said to somebody, "Oh, I'm only going to pay you when that package is absolutely complete," so let's say it was the first fix completion, and they were 60% through first fix, and you said, "Well, I'm not paying you until you're 100% through first fix." Well, that seems a little unfair, depending on the size of the job. If they're there on like towards the end of the month on a Friday, they've got to pay their team. It's like, well, I'm 60% through first fix. Can you pay me 60% of that? And generally speaking, yes is the answer, because the work's been done.
It's very harsh. And then that will come down to like, what is complete? Because sometimes you go, right, or I'll pay you when you've completed this. And they go, oh, there's some snags or whatever. Or like, I think there's some defects, and they argue about it. And that can kill a company's cash flow unnecessarily. So I think that's a bit unfair.
Because if we can't pay these guys on the Friday, guess what they're going to be doing on the Monday?
Yeah.
Working for someone else.
The key is you want to be paying to a percentage of works. And through that percentage of works, you want to make sure the workmanship is right.
Yeah.
So there's two ways to do that. So let's say you've agreed terms, you're paying them fortnightly, monthly, percentage of work. So you get a valuation schedule in place for all the trade packages, what they're worth. So if you're going, right, the decoration package is £7,000. I've been to one floor, the top floor, it's all done. Bottom floor hasn't started. You're 50% through, so you're paying 50%.
Yeah.
Right. So quality and workmanship is an important one. So one key thing to do for that. So if you've got a professional team that can inspect the works, project managers, clerk of works, they can inspect works, but building control signing it off. So if you get to the point that you're decorating, have they signed off all the structural works, the drainage works, the first fix works, and the pre-plaster works? That basically everything's been signed off from a regulation perspective, and they've got a report for that to back it up. So if you're paying them, that generally from a regs perspective it's okay.
And generally, if it's a private building control, you've probably had them out a couple of times during the journey as well.
Yeah, but you need to organize it. You need to get them there for those things.
But you can also tie that into the payment method.
Yes.
Right. You can say, right, well, at this point, to receive your final payment for first fix, we get building control outside of enough.
Or you could line up your visits so they roughly line up with those inspections. Because it's hard to tie it to, like you said, if you're tying it to first fix, and then it's like, oh, here's building control report, there's still things to sort, and you're like, I'm not paying until I sort it, but then they have to order material that takes a few weeks or whatever. That's a bit hard.
It might still be a percentage.
Yeah.
Or 80%, and there was 20% of
you might hold back a little bit because there's like a defect, or you have a retention figure or something like that. But
we're going off topic a little bit, but it's really important because this then isn't, if you've got these things in place, then you're not necessarily dealing with a Cowboy builder. But so
Cowboy builders might not agree to these things. They might not want them. So you get rid of, you mitigate. That's what you're saying. You mitigate from the outset.
Yeah.
And then if they do keep going forward, they are moving to a different level of builder, and then it's trying to get them to perform. But the payment terms, agree valuation schedule, clear specification requirements, delay damage clauses, defect liability periods, retention sums, all those key things. Even if you're not using a contract, if you even had a heads of terms or an email that states these things, you're now in a contract. That's where you move away from general consumer practices laws and things like that.
Another good mitigation here is that not every build program that goes wrong is because of the builder, right? So
that's right.
And we're going to talk about why you as the developer, the investor, can be the issue. So let's say you've done it correctly. Let's say you've got either heads of terms or you've got a JCC contract in place.
Yeah.
Right. You've done the right things. You like, if you haven't done the right things, then you might be the problem.
Yeah, that's right. So if you haven't agreed with the build contractor that they need to build in accordance with building control requirements, and you don't have the work specified from a design perspective, if they build something that's not compliant, it is your fault, unfortunately.
The classic is the extension. The classic is, I'm going to get an extension. I don't need architectural drawings.
Right, yeah.
I'm just going to go and get an extension, and then building control. You see it all the time. There's somebody who was in Bolton Evening News the other day having to bring down, I've spent 120 grand on an extension, I now have to remove it because they didn't have the right planning regulation or the right building regulation.
Yeah.
It's like, well, the builder's done what you told them to do.
Yeah, he's just built an extension.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're dead right. It needs to comply with regulations.
Yeah.
Obviously planning if needed. But if you don't supply that information and they're not contracted to design it themselves, then you're in the wrong as a developer.
Yeah.
Aren't you?
So if you've no contracts, if you've no finishes, if you've no design, if you've no BC design, if you know, safety design, if you know all of those things are your responsibility at that point.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that covers you is so under consumer law and stuff like that. I think there's British standards that they have to comply with.
Yeah.
So, if they haven't done workmanship in accordance with the standards, but there's a difference between standards and regulations. So you could have like that extension could have been built to British standards, but not to regulation.
Yeah, correct.
So that's still your fault. So,
yeah.
And that won't cover you. So absolutely it's your fault. So yeah, if you don't have those payment terms agreed and they message you every 2 days for payments, then it's your fault because you didn't agree anything up front and you got them to start.
And also, it doesn't mean they're a Cowboy builder if you haven't agreed the payment terms. If they say to you at the end of the month, I need 20% upfront for order materials, and you haven't agreed it, that doesn't mean they're a Cowboy builder. It means you haven't agreed the payment terms. If they're asking for payment at the end of the month for 100% of the works, and you're saying, "Oh, I'm not going to pay you the 100% of the works, I don't have the money," or 100% of the works because I don't know whether the works have been completed.
Yeah,
that's because your inspection process isn't right.
Yeah.
And you haven't agreed the valuation process. These are the payment terms that matter. And that isn't the builder's fault. The builder needs paying for what he thinks is right.
Yeah.
So it's you that needs to drive that.
And the other thing is like a clear time frame of the works. So I don't know if the builder says, it should take 14 weeks or something. That's not really agreed, is it?
No.
It's a Gantt chart that shows this is the program. We've agreed that you'll finish on this date based on this scope of works.
Yeah.
Because what will happen if you get to the 14 weeks, we said, that was just my estimate at the time, and like we weren't doing this and that, and I didn't really know what was agreed.
Yeah.
So you can't really hold them to anything at that point. But if it's very, very clear that you've agreed to finish at this date based on these works.
And in today's AI world as well, no excuse not to have a Gantt chart.
Yeah, it's very easy to do, isn't it?
This is what I'm trying to do. Can you please come up with the independent trade packages that may occur on my project, and can you put it into a reasonable time frame?
In saying that, you want the program to be theirs.
Yeah, but you can still have a guide.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because you might know, I don't know what a Gantt chart is, I don't know how to assess it or that kind of stuff. But the program can be theirs, but you can have a guide that tells you how long something should take. And if it's within 1 or 2 weeks, then you can say, well, that seems fair. You know? If you're saying, actually the roof works, because you're putting a dormer in, it's going to take another 3 weeks. Well, that seems about right.
Yeah.
And then the builder's program might be there, but as long as you've got something you can track and you can understand, that you can say, well, that's the right value for that.
So we talked about mitigation to stop getting a Cowboy builder. I want to talk a bit about mitigation if you have a Cowboy builder.
Yes, because it does happen.
Yeah, because it does happen. So I talked about it before, but if you've got building control inspecting the works regularly, they can pick up the workmanship things, and what's signed off, not signed off at those points. But basically, if this builder really isn't performing and you need to get rid of them, you can do either under a contract or not under a contract, but you need to give them the opportunity to remedy things.
Yes.
So you can't just say, you can't use the emotion and go like, he's doing shit, I need to get him offside, and just say, you need to get offside tomorrow. You're breaking the law. That would be breaking a JCD contract, or it would be breaking consumer law rules at that time, basically. So what you need to do is find out what the problems are, whether it's in accordance with the contract or there is no contract. And you need to give that list, and you need to use evidence-based information, photos, evidence, things to back it up. These are the problems.
The easiest evidence if your building control person says this has not been done to regulations.
I need you to sort these problems within a certain time frame, give them the opportunity to remedy it. If they don't remedy it and you don't have a contract, then you'd move to like a termination type thing to say, look, you have not been able to sort these problems. I terminate you on this project. Under a JCD contract, there's formal notices to issue as well. So you need to use those notices under the contract as such. And again, there is termination notices as well if they don't remedy it. So it's fairly similar. But the other mitigation is to have, you need to get replacements in place, don't you? So in the background, if someone's not doing well, you need to get another contractor on board that can take over, and bring them in at that point. So we have panel builders for that reason. That's not because for Cowboys necessarily, but for reasons to go wrong.
It's harder to have panel builders if you're just doing one project, isn't it?
Yes.
It is harder.
Yeah.
But it's always good to have a backup.
But you can build up a backup while the Cowboy builder's on site to replace them once you go through that right process.
Because if you think about how our evolution, one of our core builders now was a backup builder because something went wrong and he came in, and then obviously he's now our main builder. But we'd already started sourcing, because it's a bit like find the deal, find the money. It's find the deal, find the money, find the contractors. Because you're going to have future contracts.
Well, we just had a builder on a project, relatively fine builder, but his finances just went, and he just went bump overnight. So then the builder you're talking about, we brought him in to take it over.
Yep.
And he did a really, really good job. He actually finished it quicker and about the same cost as what the original guy was going to do it. So that worked quite well.
Real, right?
And we didn't overpay. I hadn't overpaid the other contractor as well because of that payment process. So that's how you protect yourself from things.
Yeah, exactly.
That
it's a good example, isn't it? Because that's not necessarily a cowboy builder either. Because I think that is a bit clickbaity. Things can go wrong, which, he's just not managed his finances well.
Yes.
It wasn't necessarily a terrible builder.
I think at that point in time, there was a combination. So he probably overspent on his business. So like, as an example, he bought loads of new like vans and things like that, new branded vans.
Employed everyone.
At the same time, we had the COVID pandemic where material prices went up massively. So he's overspent and the cost of everything's gone up. So he had a double whammy of finances. So that can happen, unfortunately.
Yeah. So mitigations are if you're consistently looking for good builders, then mitigation is already there. If you've got a system to onboard them as well and do your due diligence, finding one and then thinking this is the person for me forever is probably not.
And you can always improve and refine your processes, because I've done this over a long period of time, and
you've got to treat it like a business. Procuring good services into your business, that's what you got to treat it like.
And reasons that come up, you might, because of that, I can make sure I do this in the future that stops that from happening in the future.
Okay, so let's close this out then. And what is the difference then between good performance, poor performance, and cowboy builder? What's the difference? Right,
so good performance. Well, should we use an example, maybe converting commercial property to an 8-bed HMO or something? Okay. Just an example. So a good performance, I'd say, for a build contractor would be you're finishing on program, ahead of program, or, within a certain range. So, if you've got a contract program and then maybe a few weeks late, it can still be good performance. If the quality of workmanship is also quite good, it's been within the budget, there's minimal variations and things like that, and there's minimal snagging or quality problems as a result. I would say that's quite good performance.
Yes. Variations, though, this is the one big thing for me. A genuine variation, not the builder's problem. It's not the builder's fault. That's why variations exist. If it's a variation to something which was costed originally, but costed badly, then that's the builder's.
A lot of variations are probably more the fault of the developer or project manager.
Correct.
Because it wasn't clear on their
Or they didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Like you take a floor up and all of a sudden you've got 4 floor joists that you need to replace, or an entire floor if you're doing a bloody cotton mill.
But that's unforeseen, isn't it? So that's hard to blame someone.
You cannot blame the builder.
That's not the builder's fault or the professional team in a way.
No.
That's the general contingency item. That just is what happens. So the ones that are the developer's fault. So if you got something priced, but it was just the wrong spec and you've changed that later, like a kitchen, bathroom or something like that, and there's an extra cost.
Or you haven't spec'd it.
And
the contractor spec'd it as previously at one level, then you ask for something else.
But then you do get build contractors who are very pedantic with things, and they'll put forward variations that are unreasonable. So you look at it and you're like, well, that was on the design, that was the drawing. You've had to use screws that are 6 millimeters bigger. How's that a variation for $2,000? You know what I mean? It's like that sort of circumstance. So they can be unreasonable, but some contractors physically look for variations, and it's part of their model. So they'll price it quite competitively to win the job.
Yeah, once you get to,
and they'll go, right, I'm just going to get it on variations, and they just charge for everything they could possibly.
Once you know that they're employing contract administrators, then you're in for a variational ride.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
sorry,
so that's good.
Yeah, we're talking about good. So poor. So the same example. Let's say they finish a bit late. So they're finishing maybe 4 to 8 weeks behind the schedule or the program that's been agreed, without reasonable extensions of time, by the way, because they should get an extension of time on the contract if that's applicable. So the workmanship might be okay, not horrific, but there might be quite a few snagging problems. So the snagging list is quite long.
Yeah.
They've got to sort out quite a few bits, and they may be not resolving them as quick as they should have. So you might delaying tenants moving in or handing over the project, something like that. So I would say that's poor. It's not good. It's not cowboy. It's kind of in the middle for the market we work in.
And you can have a good builder who can perform poorly on one project.
Yeah. Different teams, and they might have different teams on a project. Might be in a different area. They might be just overloaded with works and things like that, so you got to try and manage them and their resource level. And
generally speaking, the more forgivable one is time, unless it's really bad, than the workmanship, isn't it? And the workmanship being bad is a bigger problem because it's going to cost you more in the future.
Yeah. So the poor performance, I'm saying, they're a bit late. They've got snagging issues, but ultimately they get them sorted, and it's okay.
You wouldn't necessarily burn that relationship at that point. You'd see how they and quite often it's how they react to your comments as well. If they're saying, "Yeah, I know I'm behind and I'm really sorry, and this is what I'm going to do to correct it," then it's almost a bit like, well, that's what you want. Because if they're just blaming the world and it rained on last Tuesday and therefore I had to, I'm like, no, stop.
Yeah. So there's some contractors who are bad and they blame everything else. There's some that are bad and have good intentions.
One of our favorite contractors was following me around a building the other day because he is late on a project. Bless him. And he was following me around and I could hear him discussing all of the things that were delaying his project in another room loud enough for me to hear it. All the things that weren't his fault. And I was like, come on, mate. You don't, I know you're late. I already know that. I haven't even raised it with you. You don't have to do that. It's fine. Don't worry. Kind of a thing. But I mean, he is a funny man.
Protectionism at a point as well. So and then
Cowboy.
Yeah. So Cowboy, they might be very, very late. So like you're talking, you thought it was going to be 16, 20 weeks for a program. You're now at like 32, 36 weeks and you still can't see the end of the project.
Yeah.
And we've seen this. I've seen this on occasional projects of us with really bad performance. And I've seen it a lot with other people that have got in bad situations.
Progression week to week.
Yeah.
There's nobody on site or one person on site for a 3-man job. This type of stuff.
Nowhere near enough people there. So they're quite late.
Blaming materials.
So quite large workmanship problems as well. So you'd walk around and you'd be like, whoa, that is bad workmanship. That's really bad. And then it's going to be quite costly to repair. Sometimes you walk on these sites and you like, sometimes guys aren't there because they're not being paid. So they're bad with their finances. And you've overpaid them as well. So that's a big sign of
there's no standards. The site might look like a bomb's hit it.
Absolute, yeah.
So, there's stuff on the floor. They're all smoking in the property. They're ignoring all of the health and safety regulations, and you're just like, this is, it's a horrible work environment. Because the problem is, if you got a horrible core team and who don't care about standards, when you get professionals into the electrical fitting or the plumbing and stuff like that, they're going to walk in and go, I'm not doing this job. And then you're going to have to get the types of the people who don't mind.
Well, that's why these, like I was saying about the site visits, because the housekeeping is a big indicator of how much of a Cowboy builder or a decent builder it is. Because the housekeeping is a big thing. If it's a bomb site, it's terrible. Like you said, it's unsafe to work in. Other people won't want to work into it.
And just horrible, cigarette butts and like coffee cups.
Poor environment. And then you get poor tradesmen, you get poor workmanship.
It's just a catalogue of errors after that.
And then it costs them money, and then they use poor materials, and they might not have regulation compliance. So if you get a really big list from building control of problems as well, that could be a big sign.
Huge. Building control problems, bad housekeeping really early on in the job, begging for money, challenging payment terms. All that type of stuff is really early indicators, isn't it? That this is not a good. This is not a good relationship.
100%.
But if you've done all of the mitigations, now if you're worried about that's too much on a podcast, there's a good book. That you've written some really great. I have to say, your chapters on this part and this section are really good. To be fair, I think mine are better overall. But I've read it twice actually. So if you go to Amazon, it's easy enough to find. It's Financial Freedom BDRR, which stands for Buy, Develop, Rent, Refinance. If you search that, if you're doing any sort of project of note, all of Tim's systems and design and processes that he's developed, not only in our business, but with 20 years of experience in project development and management, are in there. So you can go ahead and take those and run with them and hopefully mitigate your risks.
Mitigate this as much as possible. Set your project up for success.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But okay, so thank you very much, Tim.
Thanks for having me.
And just before we go, just a reminder that if you haven't liked, subscribed, or turned notifications on to be alerted for the next episode, please do that on your platform of choice. That way you will be notified if and when our next episodes become available. And you can stay on top of everything. And hopefully this has been a good episode and you've learned something. And until the next one, we will catch you then. Bye for now.
Until the next one. Bye for now.
Thank you once again for joining us on the Financial Freedom Podcast, sponsored by us at Property Portfolio Building. If you want to get in touch with us about today's podcast or any of the learning topics that we've gone through today, you can email us at podcast@invest-prop.co.uk or get in touch with us with whichever your social media platform of choice is. If you think you would add value to us as a guest on this podcast, you can please get in touch and let us know what you would be able to talk to us about. Other than that, we wish you well on your financial freedom journeys. And once again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.